Hi, I'm just going to share this little extract here from Channel 4 News discussing the Supreme Court's ruling yesterday and how Boris Johnson might be reacting to that, how his cabinet might be reacting to it. So this is one of the Tory advisors, senior advisors speaking here.
Deal with them.
Many people suspect that the Downing Street machine have had a very big hand in this. Downing, but particularly Dominic Cummings. Should he resign?
I've been through this before with Dominic Cummings. During vote leave, when things got difficult, people called for him to go. And I was amongst those who defended him at the time, and we went on to win. So I'm not going to leap in and say he should go. Clearly, there have been elements of the strategy which have not worked. We didn't get to a general election in particular.
Steve Baker, thank you very much indeed for...
So that was Steve Baker, and he's talked there about a strategy. The strategy did not work. This again is yet more admissions coming from this government, if you can call them that. Cabal is a more accurate description. This is what we are getting from them, the double speak now, because proroguing of Parliament was apparently perfectly normal. It was just the normal proroguing. It was just a bit longer than normal. Well, in fact, a very lot longer, 5 weeks, just at a crucial time when Parliament needs to be discussing the details of Brexit, just at a time when Boris Johnson has been placed as the puppet in power to get a hard Brexit through. In fact, any Brexit that does not involve Britain having to deal with EU tax laws, which will be coming into effect in Britain in January. And that means all of these very wealthy London city financiers are suddenly going to be up for scrutiny, all their businesses, and they have a lot of they are involved in a lot of criminal activities, including money laundering. And you know, what does money get laundered for illegal drugs, child abuse, human trafficking, illegal sale of weapons, money laundering, criminal money, basically money that's been created out of human suffering. We're talking serious crimes here, and they've set up a serious group of criminals at number 10 in order to protect them all. And here we have, from the horse's mouth, yet again, now that he's talking about the strategy, because as we just heard Jon Snow say, do you think Dominic Cummings should now go? And he says, no, I will defend him. Clearly the strategy didn't work. What was the strategy then? Obviously, proroguing Parliament for 5 weeks in order to shut down democracy, in order to shut down Parliament, in order for the cabal to get away yet again with their financial criminal activity and avoid paying the taxes that we all pay. That since World War II, we in Europe, quite different to America and other nations, we understand that taxes are there to pay for the benefit of the people, so that we have an NHS, so we have free education, so we have things like social housing and welfare, so capitalism actually serves society as well as making profits for itself. Because it's not a communist form of financial system, is it? We're talking socio-capitalism that was established in Britain post-World War II. Socio-capitalism. We didn't abolish capitalism. We didn't become a communist dictatorship. We embraced a democracy. In fact, the vast majority of EU laws are based on what we in Britain devised and developed ourselves after World War II. And from that time, people understand taxes, national insurance contributions, we pay for each other's welfare, and the result is a happier, healthier society with less crime. And unfortunately, you know, since Thatcher, they've been, you know, really been hacking away at it until today we're, you know, facing the last remnants of it. And I'm hearing Leave voters, hard Leave voters, that yet still remain convinced by the government's narrative, talking about getting back to British culture. Well, that was British culture. Socio-capitalist society established after World War II. We, the people, established it. And since then, it's always been the Tories and the Libs against us. They all voted against it. They all voted against an NHS, against free education, against welfare, against a minimum wage, against workers' rights. So anybody who's standing against all of those things, then if you're not a city banker, then all I can suggest is that you need to get yourself informed, fully informed, and awake to the reality that we are living in. But this guy here has stated very clearly that prorogation was a strategy, that they decided to use the excuse of the Queen's speech to shut down Parliament for an extraordinarily long period of time in order to shut down Parliament's voice, the voice of democracy, so they can get through a deal that suits them and that would leave the rest of Britain in severe hardship. That's the fact of it. And by now, the vast majority of people in Britain are aware. They're aware of what a hard Brexit actually means, and they don't want it. People have been scared. In fact, people have been terrified. Britain's youth, it was reported in the mainstream press even, Britain's youth are terrified. Now, here I'm going to go to this hypocritical figure here, George Galloway. I was on the fence about him. Now I'm absolutely sure he's a total shill. I've got absolutely no time for him whatsoever. And I've written a comment here, and I think it's very relevant. I've said, really sick of hearing Galloway going on about democracy in relation to the referendum. And the referendum is not legally binding. Parliament has the lawful duty to make final decisions in response, equals to take everyone's needs into account. So e.g., sick people, children, the elderly, people with jobs or businesses at risk, do not collectively end up paying the highest price for satisfying minority benefits, i.e. tax breaks and havens for the rich. Johnson PM unlawfully attempted to halt Parliament's democratic duty to respond to the referendum result. You see, because I am getting sick and tired. The record is wearing very thin about the referendum. People voted. They voted for Brexit. We were told right from the start the referendum is not legally binding. It isn't the same as a democratic election. It is an advisory to Parliament. Fact. End of story. Don't talk to me about it again. I'm sick of hearing it. It's a pack of lies. The referendum, it was not a democratic choice of the people. It was an advisory vote to Parliament. In other words, Parliament then has a lawful duty to act on that result, to consider it and act accordingly. That's the fact of it. So Parliament has a huge responsibility to respond to the referendum, not the government, not the government. This is legally, it's about Parliament. Parliament has a lawful duty to respond to the advice of the people. The people have given their advice. It isn't a choice. It's like, well, on our advisory. And then Parliament has a duty to act on it. That's the law. That's democracy. If it was a lawful, legally binding vote, then yes, the Brexit win would have meant we leave. But not with no deal. Okay, so I'm going to get onto that into the next part. B. The referendum was unlawful according to Leave campaign's lies, illegal finances, criminal voter targeting and direct threats. Certainly, had Remain won on the strength of such tactics, we'd never have heard the last of it from the likes of Galloway and co. And that's the truth. That's the fact. Okay, he would have, if the Remain vote had won on the same tactics as were used for the Leave campaign win, of lies and illegal finances from all and sundry, even laundered money donated, invasion of privacy, hiring a global corporate social engineering firm to breach people's data protection. He'd be having a field day if Remain had won on the strength of that. Yeah, and this is what, and that's why I know he's a hypocrite, you see. I know he's a hypocrite, because you know me, even if I had voted Leave, which I didn't, but if I'd have voted Leave and I found those tactics had been used, I would be asking questions. I really would. And, you know, that's why a lot of Leave voters have changed their minds, because they realised they were lied to. They were targeted. They were victims of crime, of data protection breaches. Don't hear him talking about that, about voters' rights, the British people's rights not to be subject to a global corporate social engineering firm going through their Facebook accounts and Twitter. This is why I don't trust this man, and I'm now asking questions about RT, because we know Russia was involved, along with America and Israel, they've all got vested interest in watching Britain fall to rack and ruin, basically, so that they, like vultures, can feed off the pickings. C. Voters were informed that there would be a deal in the event of a Brexit win. Crashing out of the EU is not a viable choice. It's what happens to countries that get kicked out. No one would knowingly vote for that. And that last point is a very, very, very serious point, because people were told that there would be a deal. Like, oh, well, of course, we're not just going to crash out. Whenever anybody mentioned about the hard border in Ireland, or what we're going to do about our trade deals, what trade deals have we got set up, and it's like, well, you know, we're going to sort something out with America, we'll get trade deals, but don't worry, you know, there will be a deal, because leaving with no deal, nobody chooses it. Nobody in their right mind would choose to leave the EU with no deal, you see, because that is what happens if you get kicked out of the EU. It's every EU nation's dread. You know, if the EU suddenly turned round and said to, say, Italy, like, sorry, we're kicking you out of the EU. That's it. All your trade deals gone, everything. You're going to be on your own. You're going to have to go and scramble now to get 168 trade deals that you've just been kicked out of. You see, nobody votes for it. It is literally like voting to put yourself in prison. Why would any sane person vote to put themselves in jail? Why would they vote to suffer the same punishment as a criminal? Why would people do that unless they've been told a pack of lies by a set of criminals? And that's why people like me have been so passionate in standing our ground, even against the attacks and, you know, the derision that we faced, that because people are so convinced by this leave argument. And even, you know, right down to the issue of immigration. I've shown in all my videos, look, these corporations that want Brexit, they're the same corporations that this same cabal government has given legal rights to bring as many workers as they like from abroad. This is a fact. This isn't a made-up theory. This is a fact. I've shown in my videos. I'm going to leave one of them under this link. Check it. They can bring as many people as they like from abroad, from anywhere in the world. And they've set up their own global corporate law firms to do it. Right down even to corporate military troops. So please, people who voted Brexit, who really believe that, oh, you know, we were going to be invaded by Muslim terrorists and all this type of stuff, the people, the very private global corporate military that has been training ISIS, and even arming them, they're based in Britain and they have a legal right to bring in as many troops from abroad as they like. Understand reality, people. This isn't about winning and losing. This is about, you know, standing up for your human rights. And if you're a human being and you can't stand up for your human rights, you actually believe that you should have no human rights, then really, I don't think you're of sound, sane mind enough even to be able to vote. These are fundamental things. Our human rights is a fundamental reality that we stand by, and if we don't, then we're not a human being. We're stock on this corporate shelves. Now, if people want to be stock on a corporate shelf, then again, where is your sense and sanity? Do you think that's why the universe created us, to be stock on a corporate shelf? But those are the points, you see. Those are the points. The referendum was not the same as a democratic election. It was not legally binding. Parliament has a lawful duty to make sure that, all right, people advised to leave the EU. So Parliament then has a duty to make sure we get a deal that isn't going to leave millions of people facing death. Now, sorry, nobody has a right to vote to kill people. That isn't a democratic choice. So George Galloway, please go away. Just shut your mouth now, because you have gone too far. And actually, I'm going to say now exactly what has recently been said about Jeremy Corbyn. You're actually displaying fascistic qualities here, aren't you? Well, hardly qualities. Talking about, you know, I mean, looking at some of the comments here, you know, get rid of them, the court's a joke. Yeah, the Supreme Court is a joke that has overturned Britain's thoroughly corrupt High Court. And it's about time we started looking at that High Court, because they have delivered some thoroughly corrupt judgments. They've left children at risk. They've supported Boris Johnson, saying that yes, he is allowed to lie. You know, he can't be prosecuted for lying, for telling such lies that have left people's lives at risk. And there's no two ways about it. You know, that again, it's not a conspiracy theory. It's not being melodramatic to say a hard Brexit was putting people's lives at risk. It's just a fact. It's a reality. A hard Brexit was putting perhaps millions of British people's lives at risk. And if it wasn't, then why is Boris Johnson, why with his stocking up on body bags? These, you know, and I'm sick of the trivialisation of it all. They've got to go. I think Parliament needs to stand up now and insist the actual arrest of Boris Johnson, because I think we need to accept this now, considering that people in Britain are being prosecuted, fined and imprisoned for begging on the streets, people who've been made destitute by this evil government, this evil cabal, people who've lost their jobs, who've lost their benefits, who've lost their homes, begging on the streets, are being fined and imprisoned for begging. Okay? And then we've got this guy, this Swansea, he lies on strength of a pack of lies, employing Cambridge Analytica to target British people. And now even lying to the Queen. So, you know, he's allowed to lie to the public according to the High Court. And now he's lying to the Queen. And we've got his own advisor explaining, we've just heard him say it was a strategy. It was a strategy. They used prorogation for a strategy. It's come straight out of his mouth on Channel 4 News. And Boris Johnson himself said yesterday, I think it was on the BBC, that, you know, this is all about thwarting Brexit. When actually he said that proroguing Parliament had nothing to do whatsoever with Brexit. So how can now Parliament, and how can it be unlawful, okay, in any way whatsoever? Because, you know, as the court very rightly stated right from the start, this isn't about Brexit. This is about whether or not Boris Johnson lawfully prorogued Parliament. That was it. And according to Boris Johnson, the prorogation had nothing at all to do with Brexit. So why were Brexiteers so avidly waiting for the results? Because it didn't matter really, did it? Because he hadn't prorogued Parliament to get Brexit, had he? Apparently, allegedly, according to him. We're dealing with absolute utter madness, and how dare he raise his head here, and how dare RT even give voice to any of it. It seriously made me question RT News now. It really has. But I do know Russia has a strong motive, and that's part of my understanding of Brexit, about the conspiracy that's been going on with foreign powers. A conspiracy that amounts to death, to thousands upon thousands of British people. We've already got 130,000 dead, undeniable fact, through austerity imposed by this cabal government. So how many more tens of thousands? What, 230,000 dead through even worse austerity inflicted by Brexit? So, you know, as I say, he said it. This prorogation of Parliament was a strategy. It was a strategy. He's admitted to it. Cooked up by Boris Johnson and Cummings. And a Chief Lord Justice. What? Well, perhaps we ought to start looking at their individual personal investments and what they stand to lose through the new EU tax regulations that we know that they are hoping to avoid with all this madness that they've imposed on Britain, on strength of a pack of lies, you know. And as I said, here, as I explained very clearly here, if any of that, if the Remain vote had won and all of those tactics had been used that were used on the Leave campaign, he would not have shut his lying, hypocritical mouth about it. He'd have been shouting from the rooftops, oh, they hired a global social engineering firm to criminally target, invade privacy. Yes. But not a word, not a word. So, you know, this is... Again, like I say, look, we have to get rid of them. And I am sick to death. BBC, tell the facts like it is. I watched their Newsnight programme last night. Again, had to sit there listening to a guy on the side of Leave going on about the people democratically voted, and all I'm saying is they should get their democratic choice. And they didn't. She did not pull him up. She did not say to him, no, actually, it was an advisory vote, wasn't it? It was an advisory vote right from the start. It wasn't legally binding. Parliament has the duty to respond to it, not the government. Parliament. Boris Johnson tried to shut down Parliament to stop it from doing its legal duty to respond to the advisory vote of the public. There you go. End of story. It was unlawful. We have the absolute, without a shadow of a doubt now, that the prorogation of Parliament was a strategy that didn't work. And you failed to pick him up on it, Jon Snow. And yes, we do need to get passionate about this because, like I say, when you've got a government stockpiling body bags and planning martial law to enforce its democracy, you can get lost. And like I say, I hope that the Brexit voters, I hope you wake up, because my passion is as much for your rights as anybody else's.